So I was sitting there, and Samuel Jackson sitting just in front, and Quentin. Just before my category was announced, Sam turned around to me and went, "Tim, when you lose, right, say Reservoir Dogs." I think my agent's kind of initial impulse was to look at Mr. Pink or Mr. Blonde, which were, you know, Madsen and Steve Buscemi. They felt that I would be more interested in that, but I wasn't at all. I was interested in Mr. Orange because I would be an English actor pretending to be an American playing a cop who was pretending to be a robber. So I liked the 4 levels of deceit that would make me go through. I also thought it would be hugely more challenging. And so I was intrigued by it, and then when I met with Quentin, that was that.
What was working with Quentin like as a first-time director?
Same as now. It feels the same. It feels that the atmosphere on set is fun and excitement and enjoyment and, you know, very, very creative. But the one thing that Quentin has that I find is not necessarily true of a lot of writers, directors, is that he's already done your improvising for you. I mean, if someone comes to you and you do it, it's there and he can go, cut, no. And I've seen him do it, and he said it to me, he said it to all of his actors, it's on the page, give me what I wrote.
They can smell it, sure as that fucking dog can. They can smell it on me.
He's already done so much for you, you know, that, you know, when your phone rings and it's him on the other end, your fingers crossed, you know. So we shot the thing in, I think, 5 weeks, you know, and for, I think, very, very little money involved. I remember Harvey Keitel saying to me, "What do you think?" I said, "I think this is really good." He went, "Yeah, me too, don't jinx it." But we had that feeling that we were in something great, and a lot of that obviously had to do with the script, but a lot of it had to do with Quentin too. And we were at the beginning of something grand, you know, in a not pretentious way, but in something great. Pulp Fiction. He read me the whole script one night, or as he was working on it. He would do that a lot. So I had an inkling of what the film was going to be and what it was going to be about, and the layering of it and the structure of it and so forth. I think he came at me for a different character initially, and then he switched tracks. I think it had a lot to do with Amanda Plummer, because I knew Amanda. We were off to a premiere of Fisher King, which she was in, and I knew she was always late for everything and is scatterbrained and stuff. So I said, send the car to my house, pick me up first, because I was going to take her there. It was going to be a date or whatever. And then we'll come around and we'll get you. Came around and got her. She was fast asleep. So we loaded her into the car, got her there, and she was sort of dizzy, but it was her night. And then Quentin was there. And I said, I'd like to work with Amanda as long as she's got a really big fucking gun in her hand. And he went, done. He built those 2 characters, which I love those characters. Yeah. I absolutely love them.
I love you, Pumpkin.
I love you, honey bunny.
Made in Britain. That was my first job with cameras involved, yeah. Originally, the way I got the job, I was calling myself an actor, which is hilarious, and selling advertising over the phone to people who couldn't afford it, and cycling back and forth to where I was staying in the middle of the night. And I got a flat tire and went to a theatre to see if I could get a tire repair kit or something. And they didn't have that, but they told me about these auditions, and I went in. I got it through nefarious means.
Do you want to tell us what those are?
I met with Alan Clark, who was one of the best directors of actors I've ever worked with. I was supposed to meet them, I think, around noon or something like that. So I turned up at 11:30, like about half an hour early. And they said, "Oh, you're early. Come back in half an hour." And I went, "Oh, okay. I'll just go wait in the park across the road." And I went over into the park, and I knew that their windows looked down into that park. And I did a bit, just got into character a little bit, and then. Luckily, a mate of mine from a band who had a huge peacock hairdo came through the park and me and him started mucking about, and then we got stopped by the police and searched and all of the usual. Then I went in and did the audition and got the job, and then we went off. And then the last day of filming, Alan Hart said to me, "You know why you got the job?" I said, "Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you were watching me out that window." And he went, "You bastard." I said, "Yeah." And then he got me my next job. So it's good. You got to, you know, keep your wits about you, is what I would say. The hit. It was complicated because Joe Strummer from The Clash was going to play Myron, and then he couldn't do it because he had to be with the band for some reason. The character was based on bullies that I'd known at school, bullies that I'd known outside school, and Polish commandos who my dad had told me about from the Second World War, which was where all the razor blades in the collar came from, and little steel blakies, which we used to have when we were kids, which they put all around their shoes and sharpen them so they take your skin off. It's all about street fighting and about football hooligans. So that, with some really bad fashion thrown in, and a very bad dye job. That was all character. It was my first time on an aeroplane. I travelled there with John Hurt. I was working with John and Lauderdale Sol and Terence Stamp. It was crazy, and I couldn't drive, and I was playing the driver. They were trying to teach me how to drive, and there was one particular scene where I drive around a windmill, pull up on the top of a kind of mountainous hill. It's windmills and distance, all very sort of Spanish. And we get out, have a conversation, I take a pee, and then we have a little moment, and then we get back in the car and drive away. That's me and Terence and John. Pull out, and go, cut, fantastic. Someone gets in the car, drives it back around to the other side of the windmill, puts it on its marks, drive back in again. And after about three or four takes, Terence, who's in the back, Terry says, "You're doing really good, put it on its marks." Yeah, sure, right. So I drive around windmill, and I put it on its marks, and I hit the accelerator instead of the brake and went straight into the camera, knocked the camera off the dolly. The camera went down the side of the mountain. I carried on down the side of the mountain with Terence Stamp and John Hurt cracking up in the back. But I thought we were all going to die. I went all the way down to the bottom of this mountain and managed to get it to a halt. The first thing out of my mouth was, "I'll never work again." And they were pissing themselves laughing in the back. And then everyone signed the car and it was trashed, signed the car, stood around it and took pictures, and the producer said, it was Jeremy Thomas, said, "Insurance." And we moved on. And that was one of my first experiences of filmmaking. Planet of the Apes. One of the first things I did when I was trying to be an actor was I went and did some movement classes with the guy who was one of the apes and also in charge of the ape movement on Greystoke, the Tarzan movie, a million years ago. Planet of the Apes came up, and they'd brought in a secondary movement guy he was a catcher, a flyer and a catcher in Cirque du Soleil, and they brought him in, and he was my height, built like a brick shithouse, and me and him just got carried away with the movement. We started just because I could, there's plenty of downtime on any movie, so we just went for it. We were just having the best time off camera all the time. I got that guy in to be the stunt me, my character, Thade. And so I would come in the morning, we'd both be fully in makeup, go with Tim, this would be the scene. And I said, what about if he came up off the back of the horse, up through the window, into there, and we would just make shit up, and Terry, his name's Terry Notary, could do it. It's extraordinary. Also, he was my stunt double, but he didn't need the muscle suit. Me and Tim really wanted to. I saw him recently, by the way, Tim Burton. He's just crossing at the airport type situation. But we were still talking about, it's like the movie that we wanted to make was so dark and twisted, but unfortunately, we weren't allowed to make that one. Vincent and Theo. When they told me who it was to play, I because I'd been at art college, I had studied him, and he was my father's favourite painter. I felt I was too young to play it. I went to see Bob in his hotel in Fancy Pants, London, and said, "I think I'm too young." And he said, "In that case, you've got the job." And I couldn't really fight him on it. We went to Holland first. Myself and Paul Reese, who was playing Theo, Vincent's brother, and we arrived and there was a big party and we were a bit bored and we didn't have any money, so we went to Bob and said, give us some money, we're going to go into Amsterdam proper. He gave us a wad of cash and said, come back with characters, which we did. So he'd spent a couple of days roaming around in Amsterdam, completely out of our depth with the whole place, and then came back with ideas about what our characters should be, and then launched into it. And it was quite a long shoot. During, we were given license to improvise and play with the dialogue, and then gradually Bob said, okay, you go away, you've got, as a group of actors, you go away, work the dialogue, what you want to do, how you would play a scene about such and such an event, and then come back to me in the morning and we'll shoot that. It was actually one of the most fun times I've had as an actor. I mean, I've been fortunate because I've had a lot of them. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. I was away, I was going to do some crap movie and I was in Dubrovnik, not making a movie with my girlfriend at the time. We were just hanging about, and then the film got cancelled. Yes! So, but while I was there, I got this script, and it was Rosencrantz, and I knew the play, and I was a very, very keen fan of Tom Stoppard's, and it was an extraordinary thing. So I was incredibly nervous, and so I went over to Tom's place in London when I got back, and Gary opened the door. I was like, oh shit. So we went in, me and him, and we were just sitting with Tom, and we were mucking about, and we're catching up, really, and Tom was just like, okay, there they are.
Do you want to play questions?
How'd you play that? You have to ask questions. Statement one, love. Cheating. How? I hadn't started yet. Statement two, love.
And then Tom said, can I give you a lift anywhere? And I said, yeah, I've got to get to the station to get a train home. So he took me to the station, and on the way to the station, he said, listen, I have to say, I would love to give you this job, but the powers that be, Danny Day-Lewis is being offered it ahead of you. And he said, I'm afraid it's not going to be for us, but you know, thanks for coming in and all of that stuff. I was like, gutted. That night, Danny was doing Hamlet, and he had a bit of a meltdown on stage, and he thought he saw his father and all of that stuff for real, and took a break from acting. So I got the job. So I've always owed Danny big time, which of course he doesn't need me, but I've always owed him for that, because that's how I got the job.
Would you do it again on the stage?
I have terrible stage fright, so probably not. Rob Roy. I actually thought I was going to get fired. It was something I had no experience of, that kind of class and that, you know, that world and you know, that kind of effete upperclassness, the fop thing, which was very much a thing in the United Kingdom, whatever you may call it at that time. Anyway, I started doing it, and you know, within a week, you couldn't get me out of a room without bowing 25 times. You know, I was having a fine time. But I got on the phone to my agent. I said, the Americans are coming over. I'm going to get fired. Can you see if there's something that I can go on to? Can you find me another job, because they're going to fire me? And it was my first real payday on that movie. That was from that movie. I managed to buy a house, which was awesome. They kept me on. And while Liam was, you know, the star of the movie, and he was off in the hills with his kilt on. While they were off doing that, I was working with Bill Hobbs and his guys down on the lower level in a school gym, sword fighting, and I fell in love with that. And one of the hardest things that we had to do on that was, I was with a lightweight, fast-moving sword. Liam's character's sword, Rob Roy, was broadsword, maybe not broadsword, but very heavy. I'd kill him in a second. Yeah. So the idea was that I was stinging him, and that I was around him and embarrassing him and bringing him to a point where he's on his knees, at which point he has to cheat to win. And that's not what I'm expecting, and that's what gets me. We spent months working on that, me and his stunt double.
For Rob Roy, you were nominated for an Oscar and you won a BAFTA award. How did that affect your life at the time?
It was totally unexpected and funny. And me and the missus got to go to the Oscars. And you got free frocks. So no, it was utterly terrific. But this is my fondest memory of it. So I was sitting there, and Samuel Jackson sitting just in front, and Quentin. Just before my category was announced, Sam turned around to me and went, "Tim, when you lose, right, say motherfucker," like that. And I cracked up, but didn't do it. And it's my only regret, because of course you'd be in the frame, and it would be the idea of sitting there going, "Motherfucker, cut," and it would have been, but only Sam could get away with that. Funny Games. I read it and said, no, I don't want to go through that. I just didn't want to have that experience at that time. And my agent said to me, get the previous one. I think he already sent it to me. He said, look at this. And I saw it and went, oh, okay, shit. And so I said, yes. Doing a shot-to-shot remake of a film that's been made before is complicated. There's a 12-minute take in there that is exactly the same, beat for beat the same as what was originally shot. You had to not only suffer the circumstances that the family were under, but you had to portray that within a set of circumstances that were years past and in a different country and with a different group of people. It was very, very hard to do, very disturbing. Plus, the boy that was in it, the little boy played our son. It was very hard for me because he looked just like one of my sons, and it was a bit much. I love working with Naomi Watts. She has such a wicked sense of humour because she's English-Australian kind of thing, and she's just, you know, she's sticking her fingers in your sandwiches and stuff. She's a very weird human. I adore her. Lie to me. When I was in England, when I first started, I wanted to experience different things. So even after the hit, I would do a small part in a television thing that was shot on the floor in a studio, just to see what it felt like, just in case that happened to me. And then I would go and do a radio play, and then I would go, you know, so I would find out how these things felt, so just in case they happened down the line. So I kind of applied the same principle to Lie to Me. I'd never done it. So I thought, well, I should try that. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, I think in the end we did 58 episodes of it. And, you know, the one thing I did discover, because I don't generally watch what I do, few exceptions, I would dip back into it and go, oh my God, you're so over the top, pull it back. So you could do that in a long form kind of network series. And I had a really, really good time. I worked with incredibly creative people. It was a difficult thing to keep that science being interesting. It was based on Paul Ekman's studies. It's about the language of lying, the language of deceit. He's a body language expert, so he can look at you like he could look at me now and tell me and tell you when I'm bullshitting and when I'm not. And there are certain things that across all cultures are tells. And he can spot them.
Did you learn any of those techniques that were they actually useful?
No, you could do the course. Like, the actors were given a shot at it. Some of them did it. And I said, no way. I don't want to know when my kids are lying to me. I don't want to have any of that. The Hateful Eight. It was like a theatre troupe. It had that feeling to it. So we went and we did the stuff up the mountain, all the exteriors that he could grab in the snow and all of that stuff. And then we did that version of the movie, and then, which was the complete set built, and so when we didn't have good enough snow, we would go inside and start those scenes. And then we came down to LA, and it was 90 degrees, and he refrigerated the studio. It was colder in LA than it was up in the mountains, to be honest, so we could see our breath. It was great. I mean, it felt like we were in a play. We did a long run of a play.
Well. Looks like Minnie's haberdashery is about to get cozy for the next few days.
When the first version of it was leaked, I was rehearsing a play, and Hateful Eight was already on. He was, you know, getting ready. He was pulling all these people together. He was doing his casting, and then it got leaked out. And I got a call from him at the theatre. I was in rehearsal, and he was scrapping it. He was saying, I'm done. screw this. And he was really, really angry. I talked to him. I said, go shake the trees, go jump up and down, but you're crazy if you let whoever did this, ruin such a great kind of party you're about to have. He was really, really upset. And then he did a rejig of it. And then we did this great reading in downtown, which was just a fantastic night. Well, he did that to say goodbye to it, because he did that of the original script, because he couldn't do that ending, so he said goodbye to it that way. Tin Star. We found very quickly with the core family, Genevieve O'Reilly plays my Mrs. and Abigail Laurie plays my daughter. We found that we connected, which was. A lot of that was down to the producer's casting. She put 3 people in a room it made sense. So we would improvise, and it was encouraged. It was encouraged that we would muck about, and only in the scenes that we were in, or I was in with other actors, we would play around with stuff, and it was like, go for it, guys, it's great, and it had a kind of loose quality about it. I don't know about other people's stuff, but it was what we did when we were together. So it might have been a habit that I fell into. And then we did one episode in that season, episode 9, which, with a director that I'd worked with in England, a young director, we got him out and we put him on it. And it was a kind of flashback episode, a standalone episode. So we improvised the entire thing. We would meet as actors in the same way I did with Altman and with Mike Lee when I worked with him before, and what would you do under this circumstance? What would you say? What would you not say? How would you behave? And then the following day we would shoot it, and still it would be flexible when we were on the floor, as long as we delivered the episode. It was good, and it was one of the better episodes in the season, in the first season. So when we went to the second season, with a couple of notable exceptions which were script heavy, we took that notion and ran with it, so that that kind of feeling, that kind of loose back and forth feeling, even under the most dire of circumstances, as it ratchets up, still plays. So, and you can change on the day what you're going to do and so on. So the crew had to be very patient with us, and they were. It's difficult because your day ends and then your day begins and then it begins again. So it was extraordinarily long hours because you had to get ready for the next day's stuff, even if you'd finished at midnight or something. So or you get there early in the morning, and we'd generally meet in my trailer for coffee and go, what would you do? What about if you did this? And then I would be meeting with Alison Jackson, producer, and Jess Connell, script supervisor, in my flat, and we'd come up with ideas, and then we'd take them into the actors, and it was wild. It never stopped. Twin Peaks. When I was a kid and wanting to be an actor, I went to see Eraserhead about 25 times. Yeah, I was very, very, very keen. Yeah, I don't know, how do you expect David, We would get on the phone every night, me and his producer and stuff, because we had the best time working with him. And we were sad it was coming to an end. And one night I was, on the phone with her, I said, can we have some more? She went, I'll pass that along. Next day, there was another scene. It's like, so we had to learn it on the hoof. There's one spoiler alert scene, spoiler alert, where I get shot, and he had me in a van, and the note that he gave me, and I was completely laced up with squibs, and the inside of the van was, and we were actually on the move, so you could see it through the glass. His note to me was, Elvis Ragdoll. Okay, locked you up. Okay, and that's what it was. And he was thrilled. We did it in one take, and it had to be Elvis, but it had to be a ragdoll Elvis, and that was the movement, the physicality that he wanted. He's so funny. I loved him.